It was almost 1:30 in the morning. Two men dressed as police officers walked up to a museum door in Boston. They said they were responding to a disturbance. A security guard opened the door. That single mistake would become the beginning of the largest property crime in American history. Inside the museum were paintings by Rembrandt, Vermeer, Degas, and Manet. The thieves weren't there to destroy them. They were there to steal them. For the next 81 minutes, the two men moved through the museum while two guards were restrained in the basements. Then they disappeared. 13 works of art were gone. Their estimated value? More than $500 million at the time. And somehow, more than 3 decades later, not one of the 13 stolen works has been recovered.
But here's the strangest part. The thieves didn't take the museum's most obvious masterpieces. They left other incredibly valuable paintings behind. So what exactly were they looking for? To understand the crime, you have to understand the place. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum wasn't designed like an ordinary museum. It was created by Isabella Stewart Gardner as an entire work of art. She opened it to the public in 1903. Inside were thousands of objects from different cultures and periods, arranged according to Gardner's personal vision. And Gardner left behind one extraordinary instruction. After her death, the arrangement of the collection was not supposed to be permanently changed. The museum was meant to remain essentially as she had arranged it. That detail would make the aftermath of the robbery unlike almost any other museum theft, because when the paintings disappeared, the museum didn't simply replace them.
The empty spaces remained. In the early morning hours of March 18, 1990, two men approached the museum. They were wearing police uniforms. They rang the night bell, and they told the guard they were responding to a disturbance. There was nothing about their appearance that immediately suggested they weren't police officers. The guard made a decision. He let them inside. It violated museum security protocol, and almost immediately the situation changed. The men overpowered the guards. They took them downstairs. Then they handcuffed them and restrained them in the basement. The museum was now effectively theirs, and they had almost an hour and a half.
The thieves moved through the galleries. Motion detectors recorded their movements. They weren't rushing blindly. They went from room to room, and they began removing artwork from the walls. In the Dutch room, they went after some of the museum's most famous pieces. One was Vermeer's The Concert. Only a small number of paintings by Vermeer are known to exist, making the work extraordinarily rare. Then came Rembrandt, Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee, a remarkable painting, and Rembrandt's only known seascape. They also took A Lady and Gentleman in Black and a small Rembrandt self-portrait. But the way some of the paintings were removed was astonishing. Instead of carefully removing the paintings from their frames, the thieves cut some of the canvases out. They left the frames behind. They were destroying the very objects they were stealing. By the time the thieves were finished, 13 objects had disappeared. Rembrandt, Vermeer, Degas, Manet, Govert Flinck, a Chinese bronze vessel, and a Napoleonic eagle finial. The stolen collection wasn't simply one category of artwork. It was a bizarre mixture, and that created one of the biggest questions in the entire investigation. Why these 13? Because there were other valuable works inside the museum, yet the thieves left them behind. They didn't enter every gallery. They didn't simply grab whatever looked expensive. They made choices, and nobody has ever completely explained those choices. The strangest object among the stolen objects was something that looked almost ridiculous compared with the masterpieces, a small bronze eagle finial. It had once been part of a Napoleonic flag. Why would thieves stealing priceless paintings bother taking something like that? Nobody knows for certain, but they took it. And they took 5 Degas works from another gallery. Then they took Manet's Chez Tortoni from the first floor. The museum's own account confirms that the thieves made 2 trips to their vehicle before leaving at about 2:45 a.m. The guards were still trapped inside. The thieves were gone. The guards were still trapped inside. The thieves were gone, and the artwork had vanished. Hours later, The museum's security personnel were finally found. Police arrived, and investigators immediately realized they were dealing with something enormous. This wasn't a normal burglary. 13 major works had disappeared, and because the stolen paintings were so famous, selling them openly would be almost impossible. You couldn't simply walk into an auction house with a stolen Rembrandt. Someone would recognize it. You couldn't display Vermeer's The Concert in a gallery. Its disappearance was already internationally known.
The very fame of the paintings made them almost impossible to sell, and that created a bizarre problem for the thieves. They had stolen something worth hundreds of millions, but almost nowhere to spend it. The investigation. The FBI took over the investigation. Agents followed leads across the United States and eventually around the world. Some leads pointed toward organized crime. Others suggested connections to criminal networks in Boston and beyond. The FBI eventually determined that the stolen works had been separated after the robbery. Some were believed to have moved through the eastern seaboard and mid-Atlantic region.
But the trail repeatedly disappeared. Investigators chased rumors, they investigated suspects, they followed tips, and they searched for anyone who might have seen even one of the paintings. But the paintings remained missing. The empty frames. And back at the museum, something unusual happened. The frames stayed. Today, visitors can still see empty frames where some of the stolen paintings once hung. But this isn't simply because Gardner's will mechanically forced the museum to leave those exact frames there. The museum deliberately returned the frames to the walls in 1994.
They became a symbol, a reminder of what was stolen, and a message. One day, these paintings could come back. Imagine walking into a room and seeing a giant empty golden frame. No painting, no replacement, just an empty space waiting for something that disappeared more than 30 years ago. The $10 million question. The museum eventually raised its reward dramatically. Today, the museum offers up to $10 million for information leading to the safe return of the stolen artwork in good condition. There's also an additional $100,000 reward connected specifically to the Napoleonic eagle finial.
Think about that. Someone could potentially know where these paintings are and have a financial reason to tell investigators, yet the paintings still haven't returned. So where are they? This is where the mystery becomes almost unbelievable. The FBI says the artwork was separated after the robbery. That means the 13 pieces may no longer even be together. One could theoretically be hidden somewhere completely different from another. A painting could have been moved between criminal contacts. It could have been hidden in a private location. It could have been destroyed. Or it could still be sitting somewhere, waiting. Because stolen masterpieces have one major problem. They are recognizable. They can't easily be sold. They can't be displayed publicly. And they can't simply disappear into a normal art market. The theory that changes everything. For decades, investigators have considered connections to organized crime. But there's another possibility. What if the thieves weren't professional art experts at all? What if they knew enough to recognize valuable paintings, but not enough to understand what they were doing? The rough way some works were removed raises questions. The strange selection of objects raises even more. Why steal a priceless Vermeer, then take a relatively obscure object like a flag finial, while leaving other valuable works untouched? Was there a specific target list? Did someone tell them what to take? Or were they simply improvising? We still don't have a definitive answer. 35 years later. The case has survived for decades. Suspects have died. Witnesses have disappeared. Leads have gone cold. But the investigation hasn't simply become a historical footnote. The FBI still lists the stolen works as missing, and the museum continues seeking their return. The paintings haven't appeared at a major auction. They haven't been openly displayed. They haven't been recovered from a warehouse. Nothing. Just empty frames. The final mystery. So what happened to the 13 masterpieces? Maybe they're hidden inside a private collection. Maybe they're buried somewhere nobody would ever think to look. Maybe pieces of the collection were passed from one criminal to another until nobody knew exactly where they came from.
Or perhaps they're gone forever. But if they're still out there, there's something terrifying about that possibility. Somewhere in the world, a person could be living within a few feet of one of the most famous stolen paintings in history and have no idea what they're looking at. For more than 30 years, the Gardner Museum has kept the empty frames on its walls. Not because they forgot what was stolen, but because they haven't given up. 13 works disappeared.
13 pieces of history. And somewhere, someone knows what happened. The FBI is still looking. The museum is still waiting. And those empty frames are still there. So here's the question. Do you think the paintings are still hidden somewhere, or were they destroyed long ago? Tell me your theory in the comments, and subscribe to Sokol TV for more true mysteries, impossible crimes, and stories that still have no ending.